All right, ChroNoSo here on YouTube, simulcast at the end of the actual ChroNoSo. I'm here with Dave Hall and Keith Langston. Keithy, what's up first, buddy?
Oh, what is going on, my friends? How are you? I am so excited to be here today. And I'm even more excited to be doing this with the Thunder from Down Under, Dave Hall. How are you, Dave?
I'm doing well, boys. I'm doing well. Thanks, Keithy. Thanks, Ryan. This is going to be very exciting. I've been jumping at the bit for this episode on both YouTube and ChroNoSo because we are looking at a part of this project that I've just been so entrenched in for a couple of years. It seems that the tag team scene has been what I've managed to keep a lot of my involvement in for about past 2 years of the ChroNoSo journey. So this will be awesome.
For sure. And if you're first time joining us here on YouTube, about 2 episodes ago on ChroNoSo, we did the superstars of the 1980s because in ChroNoSo, we were in January of 1990. So we wanted to take a look back at the 1980s and kind of rank the top 10 tag teams, or, maybe we'll have a few honorable mentions, but the top 10 tag teams that I picked out, let's say, for ChroNoSo and weigh their importance kind of to the show for the WWF as well. So, guys, you get the gist of it, and let's get kind of to it. But first, Keithy, he is the Thunder from Down Under. So let's do this real quick, right? Boom.
Nice.
He should be there, right?
Seems about right. Yes.
Seems about right. That was a my bad right there before. I should have thought of that before.
Good. That's gonna be a big. People are gonna comment on that, so that's good.
Yes, but either way, Keithy, you are the peanut butter and jelly to our sandwich, regardless.
Oh, thank God.
For ChroNoSo, of course, we like to go in order. And the first tag team we have here that is the winner of the WWF tag team titles at WrestleMania 1, that is the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov. Keithy, let's start with you. Your overall feelings on Sheik and Volkov, and where do you think they will kind of wind up?
Jesus, Sheiky baby, I love you. Oh boy. I mean, I think that because it was the rock and wrestling era, and you had Sheik and Volkov on that cartoon, and they were such a prominent role in that cartoon, I think that elevates them a little bit more than bottom of the barrel in this case. I kind of know where I want my bottom team to be, so I hate to say it, they're second to the bottom, I feel. I mean, it's just, it is what it is. They were tag team champions, but it wasn't a great reign. They kind of beat a team that, I'm sure if anybody's listened to me, they know my feelings on Mike Rotunda. So, I mean, you got that. And Barry Windham was always halfway out the door anyway. So while they did have a victory at the WrestleMania and they were tag team champions, they weren't around for very, very long. And they didn't really do much after they lost the championship. So I'm going to have to put them towards the bottom, but second from the last. That's my theory. I apologize.
No, for sure. Dave, they would disband in May of 1987 when Jim Duggan and the Iron Sheik had a little cocaine problem in getting pulled over and broke kayfabe. So that broke up that kayfabe arrest. Well, it wasn't a kayfabe arrest.
That was a shoot arrest.
That was a shoot arrest. But they were more upset about the kayfabe than the cocaine in 1987, let's say. But that's what broke up the Sheik and Volkov. But they were at the peak of the ChroNoSo when we started in 85, and they just kind of steamrolled all the way down the tag team card. I have a feeling they're going to be bottom tier, but I think favorites may kind of make them at the end. What are your feelings on Sheik and Volkov?
Yeah, look, I think I've got to echo a little bit of what Keithy said. Outside of that WrestleMania victory, Sheik and Volkov did very, very little in the era that we've covered. They lost the titles within a couple of months. They had a couple of tag team matches on Saturday Night Main Event, which they lost. They lost a match to the Bulldogs. They lost another match. They WrestleMania 2, they weren't even tag teaming together. Sheik was in the Battle Royal and Volkov was wrestling Corporal Kirchner. WrestleMania 3, they fought the Killer Bees, but the backdrop to that was really, it was the introduction of Jim Duggan. So while Sheik and Volkov, they lost that match by disqualification, they won the match by disqualification when Duggan interfered, but really they were there just to further the Duggan, Nikolai, Volkov, Sheik storyline. So Sheik and Volkov they fell off the ramp very, very quick. They were cannon fodder. They were jobbers to the stars. And, like you said, come May 87, Sheik gets fired along with Duggan, and Nikolai gets shoved into another tag team, which aren't even good enough to make the dishonorable mention list, let alone the honorable mention. So
yeah, they're pretty bad.
They really are bottom tier. I agree with Keithy. When I look at this list, there is a team that I would probably have below them. The tag team win at WrestleMania does hold a little bit of importance. It was a big match. It was a big card, and it was a big win. So that's got to hold a little bit of sway when you compare them to a couple of teams at that bottom tier. But yeah, they're just nothing really.
Yeah, they would go on to have a pretty lengthy feud with the U.S. Express, but they're really on this list a little bit more instead of the U.S. Express due to a little bit more longevity and a little bit more importance. They won the match, of course, and we couldn't make Keithy talk about Mike Rotunda anymore. So that's kind of why they're here.
I'll talk about that guy all day if you really want.
I think the thing about the US Express is outside of WrestleMania 1, like they were on the Saturday Night's Main Event in a 6-man tag, but really we didn't see them on the ChroNoSo journey. No. They were off the journey.
If we belched into house shows at the time, Spectrum, they have a fantastic match with the Dream Team, not where they dropped the titles, but right before, might be the tag team match of the year in Philly. Well, Dream Team do not win against the US Express. They escape, right? Or whatever.
Yeah.
Or they don't win it. Yeah, or whatever. I don't know. I'll clean that up. But they have a really good US Express match in Philadelphia and a really good one at MSG. But I just don't think you think of them when you think of ChroNoSo. Sheik and Volkov would have, if we did more house shows in 85 time of ChroNoSo, perhaps even early 86, they would have popped on ChroNoSo a lot more. But like you said, Dave, they didn't really do much. I think they're bottom tier. They're either 8, 9, or 10, mostly 10 or 9. So that's kind of Sheik and Volkov in a vacuum real quick. All right, the next team here, David, let's start with you. The Dream Team, Greg the Hammer Valentine and Beefcake, March 85. They teamed a little bit before or around WrestleMania, but they weren't really a team yet until like after the house show swing of WrestleMania 1, all the way to WrestleMania 3 in March of 87. They were tag team champs from August 85 till April 86. What's your feelings on the Dream Team, and what are your probably
You know what? These guys are a sneaky good team. I think they're a lot better than what people want to remember. A lot of people look at them and go, well, Brutus Beefcake was in it. He was a scrub. He was never really that good in the ring, so this can't be a good team. But when you look at the matches that even we got to cover, the Saturday Night's Main Event before WrestleMania 2, the WrestleMania 2 match, you looked at even WrestleMania 3, Beefcake and Hammer were a very solid tag team, and their tag team reign was pretty good. And in my opinion, the WrestleMania 2 match is probably the best match on the card. And the Saturday Night's Main Event match that happened before WrestleMania 2, I think was better. So it's, they're not bad. I think they're middle of the road with some of the teams we've got. They're definitely not the top tier, but there's a few teams I'd have below them. I think they're pretty good. Greg the Hammer really carried these guys, but Beefcake pulled his weight for a tag team.
Yeah, he was much more suitable for a tag team at the time than these lengthy, boring MSG house show matches that he would have at late 84, early 85. Keithy, before I go to you, let me just give you a quick resume I have in my spreadsheet on the Dream Team. MSG versus Tito and Junkyard Dog, 3 stars. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Tito, 3 3/4 stars from the Maple Leaf Gardens. And then the U.S. Express was Madison Square Garden, 4 stars, and then they won the belts, 3 stars. Gee, I just mixed that up 2 minutes ago. And then they have 2 3 3/4 star matches against the Bulldogs at Maple Leaf Garden and Boston Garden. They're loaded. They're very sneaky. I think they're going to surprise us where they end up. Mind you, Keith, this is prime Hammer too. This isn't faded Hammer. He's in the midst of coming off his IC run. So they're should be pretty high in my
But
opinion.
the interesting thing is he actually started teaming with Beefcake while he was still IC champion.
Yes.
I mean, I kind of echo both of you as far as I love the Dream Team. I've actually gone back and kind of rewatched a lot of the Beefers matches and stuff like that, and I really have grown to appreciate him as not only a tag team wrestler but also as a singles wrestler, and just seeing how fast and how quick he kind of developed into a pretty reliable hand as far as, you know, his in-ring work. I love that. I'm a huge fan of the fact that they kind of did beat up on the Bulldogs, because I'm not a huge Bulldogs fan. So you're always going to get, that's going to be a win for me. You know, and Valentine, I mean, I also love Ryan. You called him Valentine. I love it. I love when people call him Valentine, and especially Ronnie Garvin calls him Valentines all the time. So I like that. But no, I mean, I would probably put these in the middle. If we're going to do these like a top, middle, and bottom tier, they're in a middle tier. They're absolutely in a middle tier. And I think that there's a couple of teams I can think of below them, including Sheik and Volkov, but they're in the middle. They're right in the middle. They may surprise us at the final, you know, depending on where they are in the final. I would think that they're up there. So
For sure. I think we agree that they're much higher than Sheik and Volkov. So that's an easy pull right there. Keith, well, I got you. The British Bulldogs. Oof. Overall thoughts on the Bulldogs. I know Dave's going to be positive, so give us a negative turn on why the Bulldogs should not be top tier here.
In my opinion, I never was a fan. I never really enjoyed. I know that they kind of broke a lot of ground as far as like a different kind of tag team, you know, having like a little bit of an aerial assault and the power, which was kind of a unique dynamic. I found a lot of their matches to be kind of just boring, you know, and not as exciting. And I know this is like sacrilegious to like wrestling fans, because wrestling fans love them. And I mean, I think in the greatest tag team, where did they end up ranking in that? I think it was fairly high. Yeah. So I'm in the minority in this. I don't really love the Bulldogs. I can appreciate their tag team championship reign. I prefer the way the reign ended, and that's because one of my favorite of all time beat them. So that's going to be a big thing for me. But David mentioned earlier, they are in the best match at 2. By far and away, it's the best match, and that says something. So I'm going to probably end up putting them right below the Dream Team in my ranking. But if consensus ends up, I'm not going to fight you guys to the death on this. If consensus says they're in the top tier or even towards the top of the middle tier, I would probably concede on that. So,
all right, Dave, April 85 to November 88. They were the tag team champions from April 86 to February 87. What's your gut feeling on the British Bulldogs?
Well, as you said, I'm very high on part of their career. I think from April 85 to January 87, this is one of the best tag teams you could ever watch. They have great matches. They have great matches with just about everyone they face in that time period. They even pulled a decent match out of Sheik and Volkov. So they were a good team that time. When the neck injury hit Dynamite, you can see the team, they fall off a cliff. Their involvement in both Survivor Series matches their involvement in the 87 Survivor Series match is actually quite lackluster. They don't do a heck of a lot in that match. Their matches against the Islanders that we covered on ChroNoSo, they were a big letdown, and I'm a big fan of the Islanders, as those who've been listening on the ChroNoSo journey might remember. I'm very high on the Islanders, and I get that, probably an honourable mention. They don't make this list. I get that, but that they'd be close to probably 11 or 12. And then their match against Demolition in the lead up to SummerSlam, that's a big letdown as well. They had two matches, one on Saturday night's main event and one at WrestleFest, and they were both letdowns as well. So I feel that there's a big change in their thing. I personally would have them above the Dream Team. I think their matches against the Dream Team, against the Hearts, and then, like I said, they pulled a good match out of Sheik and Volkov, puts them above the Dream Team. but there are a couple of teams I'm going to have ahead of them. So I'm not they're one of my favorite tag teams of all time, but they're not in my top couple.
All right. So my sentiment on them is this. I think they're above the Dream Team, just to get that off the bat, but I think it's closer than you would think. I agree with a lot of Keithy's points, but I feel that their biggest rival being the Hart Foundation, I feel like those matches are in such high regard, and they should be, but I do feel that they are, as a whole, quite overrated. I don't think that they get to that great level enough to be considered excellent. But I think that at the time, especially from a squash match standpoint, when the Bulldogs arrived to championship wrestling and all-star wrestling, their tone and their in-ring charisma and their in-ring urgency is top-notch. And that's where they stand out in small, short bursts, just to kind of have that's where I think that they shine in. I think their charisma shines much more in-ring than outside of the ring. I think the dog is a key act to them, right? From a connection standpoint, and it's kind of deodorant to overall character of them. I think that they kind of, as you would see Davey as a singles, right? He would lack that connection with the fan base at that higher level and that kind of held him in the mid card throughout his career as a single star. And that kind of deer in the headlights started in the tag team here. And then Dynamite is kind of, once he gets that neck injury, he is extremely checked out, it seems, right? So I think that they should be held in high regard. I just think it's at the bottom of that top tier. And I think the Dream Team is at the top of the second tier, so to speak. And if Keithy, I don't think you're wrong having them over it. I just think it's closer than it should be, just by the perception of the Bulldogs, you would think. But once you kind of sink your teeth into the Bulldogs, no pun intended, I think that you can kind of get you can find a lot of holes within them. But they definitely changed the game from a in-ring tag team standpoint. But my biggest flaw for them is it's in a squash match kind of standpoint, so to speak. Where
I also knowing just how much of a dick that Dynamite Kid was in real life, that kind of taints my my feelings as well, just because he was a dick, and he just was a dick to everybody. And and I don't think Davey Boy was that much better. So it's it's hard. It's hard for me. And I know that the injury happened in December, I think, that he originally got hurt. And then so it's funny, that huge match where they lose the titles to the Hearts, Dynamite doesn't even get in. So it sucks. It's terrible. So, but
leading into them, Davey is tag teaming with countless other single stars to make it work for the 2 months leading into the title change.
Right.
So I think they really kind of wanted to stretch that out to maybe WrestleMania 4, perhaps, but it just doesn't work. But who they did drop it to was the Hart Foundation, April 85. All the way pretty much throughout ChroNoSo. So this is definitely the most longevity with any tag team. And they were tag team champs within the 80s. Mind you, that's all we're talking about, is the one title reign, February 87 through November 87. And it's cool because they were both brought in, brothers-in-law, right? They were both brought in as single stars. Brett with the failing cowboy gimmick, Anvil kind of bouncing around with managers, if it's Fuji, if it's Jimmy Hart. And then I guess Brett just pitches, well, just put me in a tag team with Anvil. And the Hart Foundation is born. And it really helped both their careers get their footing. They would all, Brett especially would kind of have a pivot off, after WrestleMania 4, he would go on a singles run, right? But they were still always in the same vicinity. And at the end of 84, they came together as a tag team, and they had the great run in 89. So I think this is 1 or 2, maybe 3, but I don't think it's any lower than 1 or 2 or 3 really on this list. Keith, we can start with you, or Dave, excuse me. Dave, let's start with you. It's your turn here. What's your feelings on the Hart Foundation?
Those who've listened to our journey on ChroNoSo know where the Hart Foundation stand with me. They are my number 2 tag team of all time. And I think they are the number 2 team on this list. You're talking about a team that grew and got better and better as time went by. So even there, we didn't see a lot of their early tag team stuff on the ChroNoSo journey until we hit WrestleMania 2. And the work they put together at WrestleMania 2, working with Andre and all that, they really stood out and really shone in that match. Then you have them move into the tag team championship run. They were having great matches with the Bulldogs. Again, we didn't really cover them at this time. And imagine if we did. I mean, I'm sure there was some, like you said, maybe a little bit overrated, but there still would have been some back for the time. They would have been some absolute bangers. Then we hit, their tag title reign is great. And we need to remember when they dropped the belts to Strikeforce in November 87, they were at the time the longest reigning tag team champions in WWF history. So they held those belts longer than anyone had done that before. Then they come out of that, and we have continued every time they get in the ring together. We just seem to get better and better. They have great matches in 88 with Demolition. They have great match. Their participation at Survivor Series, both 87 and 88, is just top notch. I really think they are one of their work at the 88 Survivor Series is just absolute blows me away. And then I raved about, I covered the Hart Foundation Brainbusters match. I think that's one of the best tag team matches that we have covered to date on ChroNoSo, if not the best. They're outstanding. I love them. I can talk all day about them, but I'll let you guys have your say as well. But to me, they are above every team we've talked about so far. In my mind, there's only one team that's going to get ranked higher. I would have them in the top 2.
Keithy, we can make that 1 or 2 argument there, but do you agree that the Hart Foundation is the number 1 team that we've talked about so far, and your overall thoughts on them?
Yeah, with number 1 with a bullet. I mean, come on, seriously. Yeah, I would echo Dave as well. There's one other team that goes above them, in my opinion. There's cases to be made for a 2 or 3, but they're really number 2, especially because every televised match, like for whether it's a Saturday night's main event or a pay-per-view or whatever, they're just awesome. They're awesome. They put on a classic. And the only thing that hinders this is that they did try to break them up a couple of times to give them like singles pushes, like 88 and 89, but they always come back together. And when they come back together, they're still really amazing. They're amazing. So I think if you take that into consideration, that's the only thing that hurts them. And that doesn't even really hurt them that well, because still, I think going through 1989 on GFA Live, we did a lot, we were watching all the televisions, all the superstars, and every event center, it's like Brett's fighting Perfect around the circuit, and every Perfect and Brett match is phenomenal. So it's like, even when he's in a singles run, he's incredible in that era when he wasn't really considered a singles guy yet, Brett. So I have to really give it to the Hearts. I love the gimmick. I loved the ring attire. I even liked that, like, kind of it's not really navy blue, but like the blue and the black, and then they go to the pink and the black.
In the 80 early 85, 86 era. Yeah.
When they end like as the last 3 guys in the Battle Royal at WrestleMania 2, it's like it's probably one of the best later Andre the Giant, like after Andre kind of starts to slow down type of things, is him in that Rumble. Him in that Battle Royal is so good with Brett and Anvil. Anvil takes the boot and then just freaking he is like, wah! He flies out of the ring. It's so good. So yeah, no, this is, for now, it's number 1 with a bullet. I know who's going to go above them, at least in my opinion. I would love to see if Dave and I agree. I would be freaking out if like Dave says the Killer Bees are his number 1. It would be awesome.
We can jump to him here if you want.
No. We go in order in this business.
Well, if we're going back to back with number 1s, you're up. The Killer Bees, June 85 to August 88, and their jump up moment, because they were never tag team champs, was winning the 1987 Survivor Series tag team 10-man tag team match, and they were the survivors with the Young Stallions. Keithy, where are you at on the Killer Bees?
Right where you have them right now is where they are. They're below
So you think Sheik and Volkov are above them?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, come on. Brian Blair. We know what Sheik thinks of Brian Blair. Jim Brunzell's best work is when he's not with Brian Blair. I mean, the guy could throw a drop kick like with the best of them. But no, the Killer Bees, I get so frustrated trying to remember if they're supposed to be wearing masks, if they're not supposed to be wearing masks. I feel like the best description of the Killer Bees is when they brought in the Bushwhackers, they immediately upgraded that like curtain jerker tag team to like open the show. Like either on the A show, you have Coco Beware in the opening match. On the B show, you have the Bushwhackers. And that's a severe upgrade from the Killer Bees. So yeah, no, the Killer Bees are probably on the bottom of this. I actually forgot that they were the Survivors in '87, and that surprises the shit out of me. I would have rather have seen the Conquistadors be the Survivors in '87.
That was '88. But
that was
mind
88.
you, now Dave, are you going to stick up for your boys at all? We have Keith suggests we put them dead last. I would say that they are better in-ring wrestlers than Sheik and Volkov, and they are maybe perhaps just as memorable as a team. Sheik and Volkov, of course, more star power, but the Killer Bees are more memorable, better workers, and have a little bit more longevity than Sheik and Volkov. Do you weigh any of that, or what's your thought?
All right. I'm just going to start out with let's take those three things. Longevity. Yes, the Killer Bees have a little bit of a longer run in the WWF than Sheik and Volkov as a tag team. I'll accept that. In-ring skill, in the time period we're looking at, yes, you could say they're probably better technicians or better aerial workers or whatever, and primarily because Volkov was an absolute slouch. Sheik is actually, in 84, 85, Sheik's actually not too bad in the ring, but Volkov is terrible. Right? But let's put some things into perspective. When we see them in matches, they are essentially jobber to the stars. They lose.
Volkov become, but just
yes,
the other
as
side
Sheik
of
and
the team.
Volkov. But Sheik and Volkov won the tag titles. The Killer Bees couldn't even get a tag title match. They couldn't even get a tag title match against the Hart Foundation, who were the longest reigning tag team heel champions of all time at that point, or against other heel tag. They never didn't get shots against the Dream Team. They didn't get shots against Demolition. They didn't get shots. Their matches were boring. The only thing, unfortunately, the only thing that they made them compelling was the mask gimmick, which is actually a heel gimmick. What they bring to the ring, unfortunately, what the product that we get coming out of it, if we're talking about impact in this time period, if we're talking about the way they're perceived, yes, they're better in ring than Sheik and Volkov. Yes, they're around longer. Yes, they probably have in ring a few more jump up moments. But the fact is, Sheik and Volkov won the tag titles. The Killer Bees pretty well. The only time we are even remembering them is the 87 Survivor Series win, of which I think that was basically just we've never really done anything with you and we've never given you the belt. So here you go. You can win this match as we just want you to feel like we do care about you. But then they're pretty well off the edge again straight after that. And then the only other decent match they ever had was probably against a team we're going to be talking about in a moment, and that's the Rougeau brothers. And that was really because the Rougeaus had just turned heel and really played into it. I think below Sheik. I
think it's close. I'm fine with keeping them last as is.
There's my pre-match, my pre-work on. If you can see it there, they're below Sheik and Volkov.
I'm good with it. I got no real issue because we're talking 9 and 10. It's no issue. I just think they were hating on the Bees a little bit too much. I think they're pretty memorable with all those things working against them. What do you think, though? Brian Blair has a killer run, or I don't want to say killer. He has a sneaky good run in the summer of '84 in the WWF, right? And he turns out all these good matches. He's in the matches with tag matches with Andre the Giant. He gets this kind of tag of being a good worker. And then they bring in Jim Brunzell. They're both from the Minnesota area, and they throw them together and make the Killer Bees. If he doesn't go on that run in '84 and comes in, perhaps he kind of screws himself a little bit in '84 coming in a way, right?
I think probably if you really want to look at it, what probably cost the Killer Bees more than anything was the arrival of the Bulldogs. Because the Bulldogs, as we said before, they had this charisma. They brought something different. So the Bees were quick pace, throwing drop kicks all off the top rope, but the Bulldogs just had something different. And I think in that time period, if the Bulldogs didn't come into the company, we'd probably be looking at the Bees in a very different light, because I think the Bees probably would have had tag team championship opportunities and would have been in a higher profile position. But the Bulldogs usurped them, and they're basically against each other in that face tag team spot the rest of the time they were there.
All right, the Fabulous Rougeau brothers, February 86 to the duration of the 80s during ChroNoSo. They just have really solid matches, and their match recommendation I have here is versus the Rockers at the Nassau Coliseum from June 1989. Dave, I believe you covered that one on ChroNoSo.
I did. That's extremely a fantastic match.
Extremely plucky heel team. Immense charisma outside of the ring, decent charisma in the ring, extremely underrated in my opinion. I wonder where they kind of would lie versus a team that we talked that was sneaky underrated before. But overall, I think the Rougeau brothers are at the top of the bottom tier or at the bottom of that kind of middle tier. Dave, make your pitch. I know they're your favorite team.
They're not quite my favorite team, but doing this journey, I've come to have a massive appreciation for them. So again, another team that you've got their career in the WWF is 2 segments. February 86 to May 88, they're this babyface tag team that if they just stay babyface, they'd be below the Bees. They were bland, they were average, nothing memorable. Then you get their heel turn in May 88 and they become a top-notch team. Jacques he's a natural prick, and it shows. He's great. Raymond is fantastic. The heel turn not only revitalize them, but really catapult them up. I think that, again, in another time period, the heel Fabulous Rougeaus would have been tag team champions for a long time. They really have a bunch of great matches. I've covered a lot of them, but their matches with the Killer Bees, the Bulldogs, the Rock are good. Their matches against the Rockers are outstanding. 4 to 5 star stuff. They were just brilliant in ring. And the character work they bring to those matches just adds to the element. Now, again, if you're taking in the entirety, then you've got to accept that their babyface side of it brings down their status. If it was just their heel run, I'd have them above the Dream Team. If it was just on their heel run. As bringing the babyface element into it, I think you've got to have them below the Dream Team, because those babyface matches are pitiful.
Keithy, what's your thoughts on the Rougeau brothers, the Fabulous Rougeau brothers?
I put them in the same spot. They're below the Dream Team. And part of that is, while they are an incredible tag team and had almost all of the it factors for a good heel tag team, they're at best a mid-card heel tag team, and they were never going to make it really any further than that. Lest we forget, the majority of their feuds were with the Bushwhackers. So, I mean, if you're stuck feuding with the Bushwhackers for this long, yeah, you can't really do it. I mean, their charisma pulls them above Sheik and Volkov. I love that David mentioned earlier that they sang their own theme song, which is probably one of the best theme songs ever.
It really is.
I mean, it's probably, you know, it's funny. My first interaction with Pete on Mike was he called me when he was doing his old show, Greetings from Allentown, and he asked me if I knew the lyrics to the All American Boys. And I was like laying on my couch watching television. I had no idea who was calling me, and he called me and he was recording. And he goes, "Do you know the song?" And I went, "From Montreal to Memphis, parlez-vous français?" And I said it, and he was like, "Yes," and he was so excited. So yeah, no, definitely they stick in your head. It's just, and believe me, I love everything that they do with the Rockers. I loved when they had interactions with other tag teams as well. It's just them getting like saddled with the Bushwhackers for so long was just really painful. And it's funny because a couple of, like we had mentioned the Bolsheviks, another team that's kind of an honorable mention on here that's not on here is like the Powers of Pain. Again,
Yeah.
Powers of Pain and the Bushwhackers. That's like they were another ongoing, never-ending feud. So yeah, I would put them here. Shame they never won the tag titles, but obviously there was a reason why, and that is because of who we're going to talk about next.
Well, can I just throw in? Not just who we're going to talk about, Lex, but I'm wondering. I think the Rougeos were hampered more than anything by the arrival of the Brainbusters, because the role that the Brainbusters ended up playing and then their series with Demolition, I really think if the Brainbusters hadn't been signed, hadn't come to WWF, the Rougeos may have had a run with Demolition. Yeah. And I really think it would be very interesting to see early to mid 89 what those sort of matches might have looked like. And maybe we talk about the Rougeos as tag team champions, even for a short period of time. But I think, again, another team that someone's come in that's usurped that spot and just it ends up having a bit of an impact.
The one thing I would say about that is we saw a glimpse of what could have been when the Quebecers started. And I think what you have is you have that Jacques is a little bit more villainous and a little bit more rugged, like aggressive, because he had been like kind of this goofy character for so long, with first being in the Rougeos, then being the Mountie and all that. So he kind of comes in, he's a little bit more angry, a little bit more vindictive about things. And then you had it's POC, but I mean, good Lord, I mean, that guy is just a beast. So I mean, it was just, and that was one of the best things about that, was that they were just so badass in that. But that's for the next segment of ChroNoSo Stars of the 90s ranking. So we'll talk about them. We'll eventually visit them, right?
Yeah, in 2029.
Yeah.
All right. I like our list so far. I don't think there's anything that's like sticking out from a blaring standpoint. So let's jump to the team that I suspect shall go straight to the top, if not one or two. That is Demolition, Axe and Smash, January 87, tag team champions twice, March 88 to July 89, and then November 89 to December 89 for a quick transitional championship at the end. Keithy, I know David's sentiment here. Let's start with you, Keithy. Demolition, Axe and Smash. Tell me when to stop, Keith. Ready? Higher?
I'm not saying when. Keep going.
Keep going.
Keep going.
All right.
Keep going. Keep going.
All right. That's
Can
it.
You go any,
keep going. Keep going higher.
Keep going. Can you go any higher? I mean, Demolition is, without a shadow of a doubt, my favorite tag team of all time. I actually, if I can promote the shit take on the Backbone Wrestling Network, my first shit take was the Road Warriors are an overrated tag team. And the reason why is two reasons. Number one, I said they had the Andre the Giant effect, which is once they won the championship, who the hell is going to take the championship off of them? And that was not what it was with Demolition. Demolition had the best reign, all three times. And I'm even going the third one and I know how the third one ends, but the best thing about Demolition is that even though they were so dominant as a tag team, you had believability that they could lose. And that's what made their championship reign that much better. And it's so funny that David mentioned earlier about the Rougeos kind of getting, knocked out of that by the Brainbusters. I don't know if I agree 100%, because I think you would have had to change the Rougeos into a real serious tag team like the Brainbusters were. But I've had extensive discussions with Pete about if Tully Blanchard had not got in trouble in 89, that in fact, I think that they would have beat Demolition again instead of the Colossal Connection. They would have had the match at 6. And then Demolition would have beaten the Brainbusters in like a rematch at 6. And that would have been when they three-peated, because it just seemed like the Brainbusters were tooth and nail with those guys. But not only that, you had the two separate feuds with Powers of Pain. They had the Powers of Pain in early 89, then they had the Powers of Pain in late 89. You had their match at friggin' SummerSlam 88 against the Hearts is fucking awesome. It's so good. They have that awesome 6-man at SummerSlam 89. They had even the match at 5 with Fuji being involved was great. The double turn. I mean, everything about, they're the greatest tag team of all time. Forget about it. 80s, 70s, 90s, 2000, 2010s, anything. I would take Prime Demolition in this era, the ChroNoSo era Demolition, over any tag team ever. Enough said.
All right, David, I'm going to give you 90 seconds on like this style, and the clock is on. Go ahead.
Keithy basically said it all. They are the greatest tag team in the company history. In this time period, if we're looking at why they would be ranked number one, you've got a team that comes in as a heel, rockets to the top, and the fans are cheering them at WrestleMania 4.
Yep.
This is one of the first elements of the fans turning a team babyface because they were so good. But you look at their run, best match at WrestleMania 4. Basically the best match at SummerSlam 88. They had the best matches on Saturday night's main event. At Survivor Series 88, they were in the best moment on the show with the breakup with Fuji and the elements around that. Royal Rumble.
Oh, the Rumble 89, yes.
You have them start the match. Best moment. One of the best matches against the scrub team at WrestleMania 5. Mm-hmm. Yeah, everything they're involved in, they're the best. Yeah, you talk about their matches against the Busters, brilliant. You talk about that 6-man match. I want to highlight something. How good they are. Their charisma is fantastic. Their in-ring work is great, and they're deceptively strong. When you consider Smash is pretty well the only man outside of Hogan or Warrior I ever saw body slam Akeem, one-man gang Akeem. He slammed him in that 6-man match. These guys are the greatest team in the history of the company. Talk about them forever, but that's where they are. Keithy raised a couple of things that I'll come back to when we get to the Brain Busters, but without a doubt, the greatest team of all time. Charisma, interview skills, in-ring work, bar none.
I got nothing left to say. They're number one, guys. You guys did it. I got nothing else. All right.
And the gap between them and the Hart Foundation is massive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do agree. All right. Strike Force, August 87 to April 89. And there was a big injury in between and they were like separated, right? So it's actually not a year and a half. It's kind of barely a year if you put it all together. But they do have 2 WrestleMania matches. They were the tag champs from November 87 all the way to March 88. And this team comes together because Tom Zink leaves the company, right? So
that's exactly it. I'm actually a little low on Strike Force. You said it. They came together because Tom Zink bailed on the company. And the company had slated the Can-Ams to win the titles. So they put Tito in, give him the reign that was going to the Can-Ams. That's how I see it. It's just this is the reign of the Can-Ams. We don't see much of them on the ChroNoSo. They didn't impress me at Survivor Series. They get booed at WrestleMania 4 when they're baby faces. Martel gets injured not long after that. He's out for nearly 12 months, comes back, and we get one match at WrestleMania 5 where it's all about, breaking them up and the Busters make them look good. Strike Force, they might have had tag reign, but they're really not that memorable in my mind. I actually would have them below the Rougeos. That's where I see them. I just don't see them as anything major. Now, if Zenk had stayed and we were talking about this as the Can-Ams, we might be looking higher because I think what they were putting together was great, but Tito just sort of comes in, fills the spot, and then they get given the titles.
Keithy, what's your feeling on Strike Force? I'm a big Santana fan. I'm a big Martel fan, but I don't really love the team. I don't feel a connection to them. What's your feeling on Strike Force?
I love the concept of them as a team. I think that they had I think it's a better team to see than the Can-Am Connection, honestly. I'm glad it gave something for Tito to do, Tito being a mainstay in the singles run forever, one of the better Intercontinental champions in the early part of the, company. And, and then you move him on to here. Martel obviously had been a multi-time champion, I think, before that anyway. So, I mean, no stranger to these two to working together. They had a pretty decent theme song. I kind of, their theme song.
It's a little overrated, in my opinion.
It's overrated. It is, but at least it kind of it got people out of the seats, maybe. Yeah, their best match is probably against Demolition, and it's because of Demolition. But actually, you know what? Their match against the Hearts, I think, is not bad either. So,
and the match they break up is pretty good too, as well.
And the match they break up, of course, the match. So because who they're with. But I actually thought you could switch the Rockers and the Towers match with the Busters and the Strike Force at 5, and you could have done the exact same thing, and we would have had a banger of a Rockers Brainbuster match. And
they have great chemistry, as we'll get to in a minute.
Yeah, although that Twin Towers match is fantastic because of just that clothesline that Akeem gives Michaels. But where would I put them? I'm going to put them above Sheik and Volkov, probably below the Rougeaus, only because, longevity-wise, the Rougeaus had a lot more moments. You could maybe even put them below Sheik and Volkov, even. Just because
we'll save it. We'll save it to the end.
Because I think Sheik and Volkov at least had more importance in this era because of them being at Mania 1 and all that kind of stuff. I know Tito's at Mania 1, but still,
All right, we'll see when the time comes. All right, the Rockers, Marty Jannetty, Shawn Michaels, June '88. We didn't get them on ChroNoSo in '87 when they popped in for one taping and got fired right away. There's no accolades for them. So the match recommendation that I have here is versus the Brainbusters from Madison Square Garden, January '89. Keithy, you just brought it up. The Brainbusters is peanut butter and jelly with the Rockers. They go on to have some of the best tag matches in 1989 together. And the Rockers are in the ring with the Hearts. They're in the ring with Demolition, and they have absolute bangers. They're in there with the Rougeaus, bangers. They're just the Twin Towers, WrestleMania 5, bangers. I feel like Sheamus over here, banger after banger after banger, but it's true. They are the definition of tag team wrestling at the time. I'm a monster fan of them. I just don't know where I would slate them due to I don't know. They're only here for a year and a half, 18, 20 months, so to speak. And there's no real accolades. And it's just a shitload of charisma, a shitload of fan acceptance, and awesome matches. Keithy, what's your thought on the Rockers?
I want to put them above the Bulldogs. And I know that's insane because, again, like you said, they don't really have a ton of accolades, but here's my defense of that. They are, from the get-go, immediately top-tier tag team in the company. They are not it's not like they're the Rougeaus where they're opening, they're jerking the curtain kind of thing. They are literally the top. They're like one of the best tag teams out there. They're the team that can go out there against, as you said, any other tag team and put on a classic, put on a, I don't want to say 5 stars, 4 stars, things like that, but definitely 3 stars almost every single time they're in. It's almost.
I have a lot at 4, Keithy, and 4 is great for me.
Yeah, 4 is great. I mean, but that's what I'm saying is like you said it, banger after banger after banger. They're phenomenal. They should have been tag champions. The reason why they weren't is, again, it's because they're in this era They're in this era where they could have easily they weren't. Were they there when the Hearts lost no, because they come in June of '88. Had they not been fired in '87, they probably would have taken the spot that Strike Force had, and they probably would have beaten the Hearts and lost to Demolition, because they were tag champs in AWA. So it's like they had that championship kind of lineage already. So I think they would have been able to do that. And I think Vince liked him. Obviously, Vince had something because he was a Shawn Michaels fan for the rest of existence. So I think that they had it. I think they had all of it. I always laughed when they said they were the tag team, and Jesse would call them the tag team of the 90s. It's like they were the tag team of the 80s too. But they just had some other bigger names in front of them. I mean, it also hurts that Demolition has that run for like a year as the tag champs, because it just kind of kills I think that if they had like either an intercontinental tag team championship or like a US tag team championship, they would have been like your perennial tag team champions in that mid-card division. So I put them above the Bulldogs, but again, that's me. So I think they're at the bottom of the top tier, in my opinion.
All right, Keithy, Dave, I'm going to play the game I played with Keithy earlier. You tell me when to stop.
Oh, yeah, we'll keep going up. We'll keep going up. We'll keep going up. All right, let's just have a conversation around here. Let's just start having conversations.
Go for it.
I'm not saying they're going to stay at this spot, but let's just start here because I need to talk this out. I'm going to hold Keithy. You said from the moment they came in, they were a top tier tag team. I'm going to disagree with you slightly.
Okay.
I think they became a top tier tag team where they got paired up with the Brainbusters straight after Survivor Series 88. I think prior to that, they were seen as a good tag team. They brought something different to the ring, but really they were replacing the Killer Bees and the Young Stallions. They were just the new high-flying tag team. Their matches against the Brainbusters took it to a new level. Then they brought it up against the Rougeos, took it to another level. They were having matches against the Hearts in 88. 89. There were a couple of babyface tag team matches in late 89. We've looked at it on ChroNoSo. Mm-hmm. It was their working with these other teams like the Brainbusters and the Rougeos that really got them noticed. So they've got to be above the Rougeos, I think, because of that. Then we come to a team like the Dream Team, like you said, where the Rockers hit is they never won the tag titles, but that's not their fault because of the era we're talking about. They were still developing. They were against top-notch teams. The Rockers we've had for 18 months. The Dream Team were around for 2 years. The Dream Team really worked well with the Bulldogs. They had some good matches, but you know what? I think I would have the Rockers above the Dream Team. So I'm willing to move them up one more there. So there we go, up one more. Here comes to me, this is where the battle comes, is with the Bulldogs. Mm-hmm. I'm probably of the opinion that what the Bulldogs brought and the dynamic they brought to the company and the change was unique. The Rockers, again, have brought in a different style, a different change. They were viewed as this young flying team that could be taken seriously. So that's what I think they took what the Stallions and the Killer Bees did to a new level. But I feel that there were teams always viewed higher. They couldn't take it up another notch. There were teams that were still viewed as better than them. And really, we're talking about teams that, like, they had these bangers against teams that can have bangers with other people as well. They weren't having, and you know, the Twin Towers, they were good. The Boss Man's good. They were a good tag team. They had good matches with Demolition. So could the Rockers bring it against a Sheik and a Volkov? Could they have brought it against the Bolshevik? I don't know. We know the Bulldogs did. We know, as Ryan said, in those squash matches, they were fantastic. I'd probably have them here, and I know you'd have them one higher up. So I guess, Ryan, you're the tiebreaker here. Do you sit them below the Bulldogs or above the Bulldogs?
Well, the Bulldogs have the longevity because the Rockers come in later here on ChroNoSo in the 80s, and the Bulldogs have the 10-month title reign. I think if you included the 90s, perhaps the Rockers are definitely above the Bulldogs, but including the Bulldogs within ChroNoSo so far, I just think that they're much bigger stars than the Rockers are. And the resume is actually closer than expected, and that kind of would favor the Rockers here. But just due to star power, kayfabe accolades, and longevity, I think the Bulldogs are just a tick apart. Or maybe the Rockers are on that dream team tier, as the Hearts and the Bulldogs are on that tier just above. The Rockers enter that tier, just not yet within ChroNoSo, for sure. Okay. So I'm good with it here. Keith, you want to make a final pitch to kind of sway us either way?
No, I agree. Like I said, I mean, I just think that, you know what, while Dave was talking, I was listening to him, but I also went through their cage match. They do feud with the Conquistadors like almost all of 88. So, yeah, so I'm not going to, you're absolutely right. They probably, Even though Jose Luis Estrada could, pull out a 5-star match if he needed to. I don't know. So
main event anywhere in the country, Keithy. Main event anywhere in the country.
But I think that's funny because it rolls right into the last team, and you're absolutely right. The Rockers showed up when the Brainbusters came in and called them out, and I think that's a perfect bookmark for that, Dave. So, yeah.
All right, who wants to play the Brainbusters? Tell me when to stop game. As you guys decide, as I kind of go over the Brainbusters resume real quick. Brainbusters 1 year, October 88 through November 89. Tag champs within that year, July 89, right up until they leave in November. Who wants to take it, boys?
Let's start going up.
Yeah, I'm going to defer to Dave.
Dave, you tell me when to stop, buddy.
Keep going. Yep,
it's
on the way. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
Ooh.
Keep going.
Right.
Keep going.
Come on.
Oh.
Keep going. That's where I'd have him. Right there.
Right there.
You were talking about a team that came in to the company and did something that I don't think anyone else ever did. They entered the company just before Survivor Series, between SummerSlam and Survivor Series. At Survivor Series 88, they were fantastic. Like, they really were good. Tully was brilliant. Arn was great. Then they get the double DQ with the Rockers. They go on a tear with the Rockers. Then they go on and have a fantastic match against Strikeforce. And then we're talking not even 6 months in the company, and they're being elevated to the tag titles against the greatest tag team of all time in Demolition. They take the titles from Demolition.
The unthinkable.
Have one of the greatest matches ever against the Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
No. And then, now, I'll come back to what Keithy said. Now, then they drop the belts because they're leaving the company. And if you listen to, as I talked about when I covered the tag title changes on the ChroNoSo matches, Arn Anderson said quite clearly he and Tully had been made promises by Vince about how much money they'll make. They were under it. They approached Vince to try and make it up to them. He said, I can't do it at the moment. They gave their notice, and that's why they left. So they dropped the titles. If that doesn't happen, they aren't dropping the titles. They're keeping them to WrestleMania 6. I believe wholeheartedly, and I shared this on the last episode of ChroNoSo. I think the Colossal Connection, that there was a makeup for what the company wanted was Demolition winning the titles at WrestleMania 6. But the Brainbusters came in, became the top heel tag team almost instantly, in using a different style to anyone else in the company had ever used as a heel tag team. They elevated everyone they were with. They were good on the mic. They were great in the ring. They never had a bad match. Not one match. I cannot find a match on our journey of ChroNoSo that was not good. You're talking about a team that just elevated. Yes, they had a short time period, but in that short time period, they clamped in more work than a lot of these teams that had 2 or 3 year runs. That's why I have them at number 3 over the Bulldogs, because they never did anything bad. They got the titles quick, and they would have held the titles longer if they didn't give their notice.
All right, Keith, let me jump before I give the floor to you. I agree with this list all the way up to 3 and 4. I just think that the longevity of it all, you kind of give it to the Bulldogs here. I feel like I'm going to lose that battle, and I'm content with that. I'm content with that because the Brainbusters are tag team champions for 45% of their run within the WWF. So that's just, they made the Rockers within that run right before it too, right? So they maximize their minutes. Great matches with Demolition, like you said. However, I just feel like the star power, not that they're not big stars, but the star power within the WWF and I don't know, the longevity just kind of makes me lean Bulldogs, but I'm content losing that battle. I just wanted to kind of give the Bulldogs one last hurrah before Keithy put the shovel on them.
Yeah, I mean, I the biggest thing I could say about the Brainbusters is that you literally had probably the pure definition of Crockett era wrestling show up in Vince McMahon's circus, and they got over in a heartbeat. And that's, I think, what was so important about them is that they were just Southern wrestlers who came up and decided to friggin' just go balls to the wall. You pair him with Bobby Heenan, which I always love when you have guys that get paired with a manager that can talk themselves. I mean, Tully could cut a promo. Arn's probably one of the best promo guys in the business. And they had a guy who could also cut promos. So it's like, It was just so funny watching the three of them kind of stand in a room together and see which one was going to suck up all the oxygen. Every match they put is fantastic. Arn Anderson's Spinebuster is probably the greatest Spinebuster in the history of our sport. The spike pile driver, how many times they did that and got away with it was so good. Their title run is great. I always wondered what could have been had they not left. What could have happened if other people had come over from Crockett in '88 when they came over. It's just so good. The only thing that was missing is they didn't really mess with Dusty, which was kind of funny. But other than that, I mean, everything about them is just so good. And like you had said before, they were guys that came in that had never done anything like that before in WWE. And it was so good. It was so refreshing to watch for, what I think shocked Vince most of all was that he had always thought that everybody was bored with NWA, which is why they switched to WWF. And these guys came in and they proved that they could have ran for years in that company as champions, or even just as championship threat. So I think they're right here is perfect.
And you talk about star power. You listen to Arn's podcast talking about when they arrived in the company. They turned up in the company and the crowd is flashing the 4 sign. They're flashing the 4 fingers. Now, Vince told them he didn't want them acknowledging it. He didn't want them using it themselves. He wanted to keep that away. That's fine. But the crowd recognized them. And I know we're not taking into account what they used beforehand.
Yeah.
But the crowd, they were stars, and the crowd saw them as stars from the beginning. And their matches on Superstars, they didn't just tear these jobber teams up. There was a match where one of their matches was with Tim Horner, and Tim Horner's got a reputation from Crockett. They made him look good.
Yeah,
they make everyone they work with look good.
Yeah, I get it. I get the sentiment why they're here. I'm just sticking true to the WWF guns of this list, right? And that's all that I'm coming from. I'd love to hear from everyone in the comments if we as a collective whole got it wrong. But mind you guys,
I can see the argument for the Bulldogs being above the Busters with longevity, but in my mind, what the Busters did in 12 months is bigger than what the Bulldogs did in 2 years, and that to me is the difference. You're looking at.
It's also a much deeper tag division at the time, too, with many more foils to work with in a defense to the Bulldogs.
Yeah, I accept that. But, the Busters bring a few elements that we already mentioned. The Bulldogs needed people to talk for them. The Busters didn't.
Yeah, that's fine. No, I get it. I get why they're there. It just is what it is. All right, let me just start from the bottom. And let me know where you guys have a discrepancy on this list. Killer Bees 10, Sheik and Volkov 9, Strikeforce 8, the Fabulous Rougeau Brothers 7, the Dream Team 6, the Rockers 5, the British Bulldogs 4, Brainbusters 3, Heart Foundation 2, and Demolition 1. Dave, with you, is there anyone that just puts a pit in your stomach that we have off?
That we have off?
Yeah, no, that we have out of order.
I don't think we've got anything out of order. I think we've nailed this. I think that this is a good reflection. Like I said, I can get people will argue the Busters might be a little bit high, but my opinion is I think we've actually got them where they deserve to be for what they brought to the company. If other people wanted to argue the Bulldogs over the Busters, that's the only one I think I'd be willing to consider changing. I think everything else is dead on.
Yeah, I'm good with that. I'm good with it as well, but that is the one that I would switch. Keithy, I know you're not going to switch that, but as I read that list off, do you feel that any are off?
No, I think this is a quality list. Yeah, I think it's quality. I'm not gonna dispute anything. The only thing I had said earlier is I think you could maybe even put Strikeforce below Sheik and Volkov, but I'm not gonna argue with that. I think it's fine. So
yeah, I that's probably the closest one on this list. Maybe Dream Team over Rockers just due to like the more importance, but
nah.
the Rockers totally. Dream Team's resume is also very, very underrated.
It is, and I'm not discrediting that. I just think that
Rockers are much more memorable.
I think the issue with the Dream Team is after they dropped the titles, we really don't see it. When they were building up, taking the titles and champs, they were brilliant. When they dropped the titles, we didn't really get much out of them.
And their breakup's kind of stupid because it's just they dump Beefcake for no reason, and fucking Dino Bravo. Like seriously, like come on.
The Mega Dream Team. They can.
Yeah, and I mean at least, and I know it's 1990. Well, technically it's 91, but 92. But the breakup of the Rockers is the best breakup ever.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm good with it. I just could see a mid '80s head preferring the Dream Team over the Rockers.
Well, that's why opinions are like buttholes. Everybody has one, and they all stink. So
speak for yourself. All right. All right, guys, that's our list. I'd love to hear your comments on what we got wrong, what we got right, and who we left off. Just off the top, the Powers of Pain.
Yep.
I don't think the Mega Power should have been put on it. I don't think it would have been fair.
The team that I would throw out as consideration would be the Islanders. I think the Islanders would have been an opportunity to maybe, and all they're going to do is probably replace the Killer Bees. But that's the one team I think that might have been overlooked.
I think I was looking for babyface foil with the Bees and just to try to equal it out, get some more people in the middle of ChroNoSo because we were very heavy at the tail end of ChroNoSo. So I just kind of wanted to spread it out a little bit.
Yeah.
And I thought they were much more important than the Bushwhackers, as the Bushwhackers just entered ChroNoSo in early '89. So, all right. Well, guys, that's our list. Keithy, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Dave, thank you for joining us from Down Under. If you're a YouTube watcher, go back and check out ChroNoSo from the start of this episode, or hell, even if you're just discovering us, go back all the way to 85 and start from there. But for it, guys, thank you and see you on the next one.